Hello everybody, it's Tommy and welcome back to another Create Sim for the Disney save. Today's video is going to be an update to a character that we've already had in the save file, but we got a recent pack added to the Sims collection that so many people were very excited about, and me included, because I honestly didn't even think for real that we would get the occult added, and it is werewolves. And one of the biggest questions I got asked immediately across the board is, who's going to be made a werewolf? Are we getting any changes? Are people going to get updates? And of course, the original intention for Beast, or Prince Adam from Beauty and the Beast, was always to have him be a werewolf. I created this version of him prior that was a vampire that I really was never truly satisfied with, and I didn't hate it, but it was all I had at the time, and you guys were very kind about the version that I made and said that it was the best of what could have been at the time. But God, I was so excited to have werewolves get added so we could just get rid of it and make the version that I always wanted. And I think so many of you are going to be much more excited with this version, and I think that this meets the personality and the storyline so much better than what we originally had. So this is just the video of me updating him and turning him into his werewolf form. And this is also my very first experience with Create a Werewolf. I had no prior knowledge to the pack or how it worked. I didn't even try to test out things on any other sim beforehand. I just wanted to go straight into it and see what happened. And if it came out like garbage, I would have just probably gotten rid of it and you guys would have never seen it, and we would have made something else later down the line when I felt more comfortable. But the reality is this is very similar to Create a Pet. There are some differences, and I'll talk about that because some of the differences are actually very frustrating, but this is it at its core, so similar to Create a Pet that I felt comfortable enough to at least attempt it. So this is what we ended up with. My first shot with him is what I kept, and I actually kind of love it. I've made a few other werewolves since then, and we're definitely going to be using werewolves in not the way that it's specifically intended, like not a wolf, more so maybe for lions or bears, but this, I think, is one of the truest forms where we have like a beast, a creature that is just no particular animal, maybe a mix of a few animals, and we're creating it into, a werewolf. So a couple of the things that threw me immediately for this Create a Werewolf is the fact that one of the big tools that I love for Create a Pet that I think so many creators can agree on is the mirroring tool. And it's this little like butterfly shaped button you can hit in Create a Pet. And all it does is mean that if you do something on one side of the animal, it goes exactly on the other side of the animal. So if you paint on the left leg, on the right leg, it'll be doing the same thing on that one. It's so you can create a mirroring effect or a symmetrical face or symmetrical shapes when you're trying to do like certain fur patterns and things like that. And if I'm wrong, somebody please correct me, but the space where the mirroring button would be, it is not there, and I can't find it, and I don't think it exists. So it seems that they removed that. I cannot even imagine why they thought that that was a good idea. I can imagine that it probably had something to do with a mechanic that made this a little bit more difficult than just like painting an animal, but it makes Create a Wolf incredibly frustrating and incredibly challenging, more than like Create a Pet even is, and I'm not super good at that either. So that was extremely discouraging right away, because I'm trying to create Beast where he has these very detailed, layered shapes to his face that are symmetrical for most aspects. Like he's got these eyebrows and this certain pattern across his face, and they are just even. There's no other way to say it. He's a cartoon character, so it had to look straight and proportioned where everything is the right distance away from each other. So I would have definitely appreciated the mirroring tool right away going into this, and not having it was extremely discouraging. And I thought at one point, I'm just going to get rid of this and maybe do this later down the line. I can't do this right now. I don't like the way it's coming out, but I'm glad I pushed through, because I actually think that he came out really good. The other weird thing about this mode that I wasn't expecting is there's just like there's weird limitations with this that I kind of just question why. One of the things is that you can't paint the inside of the ears for werewolves, and they're all set by default at this very hot pink color. So Beast has a couple of things. He's got these ears that lay a little bit lower to the side of his head, and they actually lay kind of flat and out or down, or I guess you could say like pushed into the back of his head. And then he has horns. And I decided it made so much more sense just by looking at the way that werewolves can be done in this game, was to use the ears as the horns. So I thought we'll just paint the ears black, and it makes more sense to do that rather than have it actually be the ears, because I can't get the ears low enough down on the head to resemble Beast from the movie, and then he wouldn't have his horns and he just doesn't look exactly right without it. So in Create a Pet, you could just paint everything black, and even you can paint the inside of the ears. You can do whatever color you want, because this bright pink color is not something that like all pets have, right? But in this version of this mode, you can't change the inside of the ear. The only thing you could do is pick an ear shape where it hides it a little bit more. And again, I didn't want to do that because I decided we're going to use these ears as the horns. You can't even pull them down to like the side of the head and give it really like a much different shape, which I might have opted for in this circumstance after figuring out that you can't paint the inside of the ears. But we're not able to do either. So I basically just had to ignore it. I don't really know what else to do. It's kind of a weird little thing, but like a lot of the things that I've done for the save so far, we're really just making the best of what we have and trying to create the closest version possible based on what I have available to me. So it's one of those things, you know, I'm just going to have to ignore it. It's probably going to become more and more annoying down the line as I create characters that I think will fit well into the werewolf role, and I have some that I am excited to do, but I don't want to talk about too much because I don't want to spoil who that will be, because I think it'll be exciting when I do actually get there. But that was something that was a little bit disappointing about this mode. It doesn't ruin the overall effect though. I think that he still very much resembles Beast. Some of the colors may be different here and there depending on like which version of him you think of, and I looked at a lot of references for photos and things, and a lot of these older Disney movies, it depends on which version of the movie you're watching, like the VHS versus the Blu-ray versus the holiday special or anything like that. The colors and the shading and the choices that are made with like the, I guess, shading of the movie are slightly different here and there, so the colors are a little bit different, but I tend to go with the most vibrant versions of the colors that are shown or the ones that are from the primary source. So I found quite a bit of content from the original Beauty and the Beast, and I felt like a lot of these colors were very, very close. One other thing that I think is a little bit limiting as far as this mode goes is this cartoony sort of style that they gave to werewolves, which I don't hate, by the way, and it got a lot of flack when it came out. But I don't hate like the style that they went for. I think it resembles pretty much everything else that's in the game. It's not super scary, it's not as dark, but some of the versions we've had of werewolves in past Sims games are truly like just ugly, and I didn't really expect them to do anything like that for even in a cult that is considered to be like one of the more like, I don't want to say ugly, but more like beast-like and more monstrous. I didn't expect them to fully go for it because this version of The Sims has never really done that. It's a more PG version of a lot of the content we've had from the Sims universe throughout all games. So I don't really mind the way that they look, but I mind a little bit that I can't make them look maybe more intimidating. Maybe have the teeth come out a little more, give some fangs, give some more grumpy expression, make those eyes not look as cartoony. And I did do another werewolf a couple of days after this, and I figured out how to do it a little bit better than I did with Beast here, but it's still not as intimidating and scary as you may want, especially for this particular character. So that's a little limiting as well, but like I said, overall generally happy. Just complaining a little bit because this was all like my first impressions and experience using this mode. And what we did get from this pack as well is some new clothing that is like ripped and tattered, which was very nice and very needed for this character. So I did go ahead and update some of the clothing options. And then of course we needed some new clothing options as well for this version of him in general. He has some of the same outfits from his other form just because that matches up with the movie. Like even when they have the ballroom scene and he's he's wearing his formal clothing. It's very nice formal clothing in both scenes when he's human and when he is in his beast form, so it makes sense to have it be that way. But he also is shown early on in the movie wearing tattered clothing, so having the ripped shirt was a really, really great addition. Funny enough, a lot of the pants I just couldn't use. There's a couple of versions of like ripped pants, but they're just ripped jeans and they don't look good for the time period of this movie at all. So I ended up just sticking with the original pants, which are the spa day pants that are not meant for this intent at all, but I use them very, very frequently. For older style cut off trousers, I don't know what the proper terminology is for them, but they're the ones that end sort of right below the knees and then would be more traditionally worn with like tights underneath or tall socks. For men, I just use those pants like pretty frequently for Beauty and the Beast too. Like Gaston, I think, wears them, and LeFou wears them, and a lot of the villager characters wear them. So I like to do that pretty frequently. A lot of the characters that come from the same movie will wear items from the same packs so that if you had them all together in a group, they look cohesive together. And then one of the things I wanted to do just to give them a little bit more dimension, and I was also just playing around with this mode a little bit to see what looks good and what doesn't, is just some general shading so that it looks realistic, and some light tones and some mixtures of fur colors. I think for Beast, obviously he has a lot of that actually, so I had to give some highlights and just some like messy, muddy, different tones of the fur here and there. Overall, I'm just excited to have werewolves. I'm excited to have a new occult, so not everybody has to be a witch or a vampire. This adds a whole new dynamic to the save file, and there will be more werewolf characters. I've got quite a few that I'm thinking coming up down the line, even more so than vampires. This one's a little bit easier to pinpoint some of the characters to turn them into just off the top of my head, but we'll see when we get there. And also, hopefully they do still keep adding occults to the game in general. I would love to still see fairies. I think the odds are getting slimmer and slimmer, but we can still keep our fingers crossed because we definitely need it. And that is pretty much going to be the end of today's video. If you want to support the Disney Save on Patreon, the link is in my description box down below or will be at the end of the video. Gives you access to early content, a private Discord, and is the most direct way to support the save file. Thank you guys all so much for watching, and I will speak to you all in the next one.